Well, I think it does seem like we're headed into a recession here in 2023. The magnitude of that recession is debatable, but I think it's at least a light to moderate recession. Potentially, it's on the order of 2009. So I think it's wise to kind of like prepare for the worst, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Don't get too adventurous. Like, watch out for margin debt. I really advise people to not have margin debt in a volatile stock market. And, from a cash standpoint, keep powder dry. You can get some pretty extreme things happening in a down market. Like Brett Johnson, who was the CFO of SpaceX, was at Broadcom in 2000. And he said that, and that's a good company making good products. And he said that from peak to trough, I think in less than 12 months, Broadcom went down 97%. So like, even if you had a small margin loan there, you got crushed. It subsequently recovered, and I think, to much higher levels. But, if there's like mass panic in the stock market, then you got to really be careful about margin debt. But I mean, this is just, as we know, the economy is cyclic and somewhat overdue for a recession. And my best guess is that, we have sort of stormy times for a year to a year and a half, and then things start to, dawn breaks roughly in Q2 24, if I were to get. That's like my best guess. Recessions don't, like booms don't last forever, but neither do
economic situation.
Well, predicting macroeconomics is always difficult, and one should assign probabilities to these things. But ironically, I did last year. People asked me what I think about the economy. I said, well, I think we might enter a recession in approximately spring of 2022. Yeah. Now, the thing is that recessions are not necessarily a bad thing. I've now been through a few of them, and what tends to happen is if you have a boom that goes on for too long, you get misallocation of capital. It starts raining money on fools, basically. It's like any dumb thing gets money, and I'm sure you've seen a few of those. So at some point it gets just out of control, and you just have a misallocation of human capital, where people are doing things that are silly and not useful to their fellow human beings. And then those companies, there needs to be sort of an economic enema, if you will, to have everyone sort of shift uncomfortably in their seats. But eventually the economic enema does its job. It clears out the pipes, if you will.
Yes.
And sort of the bullshit companies go bankrupt, and the ones that are doing useful products are prosperous. And but there's certainly a lesson here that if one is making useful product and has a company that makes sense, make sure you're not running things too close to the edge from a capital standpoint, that you've got some capital reserves to last through irrational times. Because in the past, when there's been a recession, it has gone, it's amazing, it's flipped like a light switch. I mean, David, do you remember this when from the PayPal, ex-PayPal days, when we raised $100 million in March of 2000, and we had, the demand was so high, we had people like VCs, like just literally without even a term sheet, wiring money into our account. They literally would like sleuth out our bank account number and wire money in. And we're like, where'd this come from? And it's like, oh. So it was like, there was literally fire hosing money in March of 2000. And then in April 2000, the market went into free fall, and it went from raising money was trivial to even good companies could not raise money in a month. So it's just important to bear in mind, like, that, PayPal almost went bankrupt in 2000. We came close, but thankfully we'd raised that $100 million in March 2000, without which we would be in game over, basically. And we kind of saw it coming. So it's like we got the X-Confinity merger done in like 3 weeks and raised $100 million. Because we were all like, we see this coming to an end pretty soon. And then a month later, it was like, a nightmare, basically. And make sure if you're a healthy company, you got some capital to get through things. And then watch your costs. And if it is a recession, which more likely than not, it is a recession. I'm not saying it is, but it probably is. Then just watch your cash flow and get to positive cash flow as soon as you can. So I think we probably are in a recession, and that recession will get worse. But these things pass, and then there will be boom times again. So it'll probably be some tough going for, I don't know, a year. Maybe 12 to 18 months is usually the amount of time that it takes for a correction to happen. The obvious reason for inflation is that the government printed a zillion amount of more money than it had, obviously. It's like the government can't just, have issued checks far in excess of revenue without there being inflation, velocity of money held constant. So unless there's something would change with velocity of money, but if the federal government writes checks, they never bounce. So that is effectively creation of more dollars. And if there are more dollars created, then the increase in the goods and services output of the economy, then you have inflation. Again, velocity of money held constant. But this is very basic. This is not like, super complicated. And if the government could just issue massive amounts of money and deficits didn't matter, then why don't we just make the deficit 100 times bigger? Okay. Yeah. And the answer is you can't, because it will basically turn the dollar into something that is worthless. And various countries have tried this experiment multiple times. It's not like, oh, I wonder what happens if this is done.
Yeah.
Have you seen Venezuela? Like, the poor people of Venezuela have been just run roughshod by their government. And so obviously you can't simply create money. The true economy is very important. Like, the true economy is the output of goods and services. It's not money. It's literally, what is the output of goods and services? Money is simply a way for us to, or anything that you call money, is a way for us to conveniently exchange goods and services without having to engage in barter, and also to shift obligations in time. Those are the two reasons that you have money. This thing called money. It's really it's a database. Money is an information system for labor allocation and for exchange of goods and services and for translating in time. Now, the quality of that information is a function of, it's like you can apply information theory to money. And I think it helps explain why one money system or why one action is better than another. And so just like an internet connection, you'd want something that's high bandwidth, low latency and jitter, and is not dropping packets, does not have a lot of errors in the system. And the same is true of money. And really, like you said, what did PayPal really do? That it helped improve the bandwidth, the speed at which money could move. Instead of mailing checks back and forth, which amazingly, that was what people did in 2000, you could now do real-time exchange of money, and now you could ship your goods immediately instead of mailing a check and waiting for the bank to clear the check. So the ultimate thing that with PayPal, or if it sort of was in the X.com, less sort of niche payments and more sort of broad financial, would be to simply disintermediate all the heterogeneous COBOL databases out there running on mainframes doing batch processing, and have a single real-time system that was secure and not batch processing. So it would just be, from an information standpoint, more efficient. And eventually all the batch processing COBOL mainframes operated by the banks would cease to exist. Sure hope we don't need a war. There will be certainly, an economic competition that I think will blow people away when they realize just how competitive they have to be competitive with companies in China. It's very difficult. Tesla is competitive because we have an awesome team in China. Tesla is sort of pretty far out there in terms of work ethic anywhere in the world. So the Tesla work ethic in the US, I think, is substantially greater than any other car company or any large manufacturing company that I'm aware of. Look, I think the point of a company is to produce useful products and services for your fellow human beings. It is not, some political gathering place or a thing where that's the point of a company. I'd say, like, it's, politics and other stuff should let's not lose sight of why companies should exist.